From the day I started my first job, I worked hard with the future in mind. I was determined to give my child a better life than I had. The American dream and all that. When I was fortunate enough to stumble upon my wife, and we discussed what we wanted from a marriage, I would discover that she had the same future in mind. As we jumped ahead to the arrival of our first child, we quickly learned that between work and taking care of the needs of a newborn, we had zero time to take care of small things, like keeping the house clean. We had two choices before us: allow a stranger to raise our beautiful daughter, or hire a housekeeper. Naturally, we chose the latter and called a maid service. The years passed, and along with the birth of a second child, the housekeepers would come and go. Some great, some terrible. Then we were sent Dania, and she quickly became part of the family. It only took a few months. She brought so much more to the family than just being a servant. The connection she formed with us all, but especially the kids, was priceless. They were calling her Grandma Donna almost as soon as they could speak. About a year in, we had asked her to come work with us, and for the next 15 years, she spent 5 days a week making our lives a little bit less hectic. That's why her murder would hit us all so hard. This all goes back to 1993, a time before she had come into our lives. Dania met a man named Joe, and they had a son, Antonio. Their marriage wouldn't survive the century, but she, along with Antonio, would carry on as well as she could, sometimes working 3 jobs just to put food on the table. When she began working for us, Tony, as we called him, was still young. On the occasional days that she was unable to find a sitter, we were more than happy for her to bring him along. He and the kids would play for hours, giving her the time to work unhindered. Unfortunately, as Tony grew older, he began getting in trouble with the law and banging heads with his mother. Tony was still coming along with Dania every now and then, but his attitude toward us had gradually soured, and we learned to keep our distance. Our lives would be forever changed on a rainy February morning in 2015. I was the last out of the house for a change, and I'd left Dania to do her thing. According to later testimony, Tony had arrived about an hour after I'd left. He was there to ask his mother for a loan, but she refused. He had borrowed almost $1,000 in the last few months and had not paid any of that back. An argument soon broke out, and Tony became so angry he pulled a large chef's knife from our knife block and stabbed her multiple times, around 20 to be exact. Once he came to his senses, he fled and went into hiding. Perhaps the most horrible part of the attack was that Dania had not died instantly, but instead probably lived another 10 minutes, left to slowly bleed out on our kitchen floor. Thankfully, it wasn't the kids who discovered her body. Instead, Melina, my wife, came home for lunch and found her. The paramedics were called, but that was just a formality at that point. Tony had become the prime suspect almost immediately, and the police worked day and night to track him down. We were left to mourn her loss, a process I myself am still going through. I'd come to see Dania as a second mother, and her death hit me like a truck. Tony was found, eventually, and given life without parole. Short of death, it's a sentence I'm happy with, but no matter the time he's given, we're never going to get Grandma Donna back. Life at home was never the same after her death, and once our daughter moved off to college, Melina and I began looking for a new home. For the both of us, no matter where we looked, everything was a reminder of her death. Our one-time dream home had now become a nightmare, a constant reminder of a young man's selfishness. When we finally found the buyer for the house, we took up residence in a 2-bedroom condo on the beach. Life continued to drag on for a few more years. However, our son will be leaving for school soon, and we'll be free to take the tour of Europe that we've been planning for 20 years. We had hoped to bring Dania along, a present for being a loyal and loving member of our household. That is sadly no longer possible. Although she may not be able to join us in the flesh, I have no doubt she will be there in spirit, looking down and guiding us just as she had all those years, sharing her love and making our family content and complete. Story 2: Suicide Cleanup. I believe it was the summer before I started high school. My mom's cleaning company was short a maid or two. She figured it made more sense to make me work for my money rather than just hand over every bit every time I had asked. Maybe she thought it would teach me the value of $1. I'm not sure. Whatever her motivations, I was hired to cover the phones. This was a test to see if I could handle the workload. I must have passed because I was moved over to cleaning once the school year began. 5 days a week after school and all day Saturdays, I followed her and the other girls around town cleaning people's homes and offices. This routine continued for the 4 years of high school and college. At the end of it all, I had a business degree and a 50% piece in the company. Another 10 years would pass, and as Mom would step farther away from the day-to-day running of the operations, I would take on more responsibility. Until one day, when she handed me her keys and wished me good luck. The business became mine, and with it, all the headaches and heartaches. I never completely stopped going out on jobs. The work kept me fit and in good standing with my clients. If I told you I enjoyed the actual job, I'd definitely be lying. However, by the time I left high school, I'd become almost disconnected from it. After 20 years of cleaning toilets and kitchens, I figured I'd seen it all, and nothing could ever get to me again. That was until I got the call from the Pearson job. The man who called sounded like a kind old man, if not a bit spacey. It took a moment or two for him to get to his point, but it sounded like a run-of-the-mill house cleaning gig. What I saw when I arrived sticks with me to this day. I was met at the door by the old gentleman and led to a bedroom. The acrid scent coming from the room punched me in the gut and caused me to retch. While fighting the urge, I balked at the horrifying image before me. It appeared as if a tub of blood had been splattered all about the room. The bed was by far the worst, soaked in almost a purple-tinted goo. One wall appeared to have a vast spray of blood and gray matter coating it. The horror of it overtook me, and I ran across the hall into a bathroom and barfed up my lunch. It took a few minutes to compose myself. I stormed from the bathroom and confronted the man of what I just seen. He hung his head for a moment, at first mumbling an apology, then looking up toward me, quietly allowing a tear to fall from the corner of his eye. "I'm sorry, young lady. I know it's an awful sight. I should have warned you, but I was afraid you'd turn around and leave. My grandson..." He took a long, ragged breath and began again. "My grandson took his life this morning. He did it in that room. I can't even bear to go in there. I know it must be a shocking sight to see, but I didn't know who else to call. My insurance won't pay for it, and the other company I called, the one the police gave me the card for, they wanted far more than I could afford. I knew my wife had used your company many years ago and liked it. I guess I hoped you could help me." I wasn't sure what to say. I felt horrible for this poor man, but this type of work was way beyond my ability, not to mention my comfort level. Crime scene cleanup companies made more than me because they had to deal with bloodborne diseases and pathogens and had the proper chemicals to dispose of bodily fluids properly. We continued to stare at one another, unsure of what to say. His eyes were now filled with tears, and it was obvious what I had to do. I asked the gentleman for the cleaner's card. I spoke to them a moment and hung up. Before I could get the words out, I began to get choked up myself. I cleared my throat and began once more. "It's all taken care of, sir. Your family has been a good client in the past, and it's the least I could do." At that moment, I didn't actually remember the family, but it seemed an easy way to explain what I was doing. Although, right at that second, I wasn't sure why I was doing it. You don't have to worry about it. Consider it a thank you for your loyalty to our company. The old man's eyes lit up when I said this. His face was now one big wet mess. I don't know how to thank you, young lady. I didn't think there were kind of people like you yourself around anymore. He lunged upon me and wrapped me in his massive arms. I did the same, and we stood there for the next minute, locked in our mournful embrace. In an instant, we released one another, and I bid him goodbye.